This video contains spoilers for Season 2, Episode 2 of Fionna Cake. You have been warned. Now, if you're a huge Huntress Wizard fan, this new episode is for you. It drops a ton of new Huntress Wizard lore. Starting off with the intro, you would notice that it looks a little bit different. Now, I don't know if another studio did this because the animation isn't that different, but the actual art style itself is. This is the very first time we are seeing any history of Huntress Wizard, and it's the history of her younger self. We can see at some point the Dream Warrior spirit decided to take Huntress Wizard in and train her, as we see in this training montage. Her goal is to crack this rock open, all whilst she learns how to braid and hang from a tree upside down. As for the whole hanging upside down on a tree thing, it's actually something that we see her do later in this episode, but also a cool little callback to Season 10, Episode 1, The Wild Hunt. We see her do this exact same pose in that episode as well, and now we know where she learned it from. During her training montage, we see these two birds pretty constantly, but I want you to take note of them because they become pretty important later, and I'll remind you when that time is. As for all of the braiding, at first I was pretty confused, but it seems like these are the sticks that she is trying to crack the rock open with, thus why it would be so hard, taking her quite literally forever. As for when she does finally crack the rock, it's revealed to us why Huntress Wizard reached out to the Spirit Dream Warrior in the first place. She was seeking power, because what was inside this rock was a sharp tooth that the Spirit Dream Warrior basically said you need to cut off your own arm for even more power, and that's exactly what she did without thinking twice about it. They then proceed to take her arm to the heart of the forest before they're interrupted by Witch Wizard, who is the protector of the heart of the forest and the person always on guard, as we will see again later in this same episode. But one of the things that she says to them is green wizards only, which is most likely a reference to wizards only fools. You see, in Wizard City, if you're not a wizard, not only can you not see Wizard City, but if you're caught inside Wizard City, not being a wizard, you're killed on the spot. And it seems like the forest has another version of this, but they're the green wizards. So we've established that there are wizards and green wizards. This also gets proven and backed up pretty well later in this episode, but we will get to that. Huntress Wizard then proceeds to lay her cut off hand on the ground right next to the heart of the forest and officially becomes part of them, now being imbued with all the green wizard magic, and her hand growing back, which could be another reference that Huntress Wizard and Finn were truly meant to be, as Finn's arm also grew back once, I'm just saying. But then we also see what that weird hand thing that she did in episode 1, and it's basically the green wizard's calling sign, and why from the trailer they are so freaked out about Huntress Wizard telling Finn their secret of the heart of the forest is because that's one of the things that she sworn into at the literal very beginning of her joining the green wizards.
Keep its mysteries on lock.
We also see that Huntress Wizard was pretty much always a lone wolf from the very beginning. There is a lot of Huntress Wizard stuff to get to, but first, let's look at the title card of this episode, The Crocodile Who Bit a Log. It seems that all episodes will be following this sort of art style and having a similar naming scheme. Now, one little thing to note about the title card is the barbed wire on top of the fence. Now, as we'll see, that's something that we see in Fiona's world later in this episode, but it's also something that we see next to Huntress Wizard also later in this episode. A lot of things I'm telling you to remember, but don't worry, I'll remind you when it comes up. Anyways, we pick back up to where we left off in Fiona's universe back in episode 1. She figured out a way how she's gonna fix it, and that's by breaking in. This is the barbed wire that we see on the title card in Fiona's world. Not Huntress Wizards yet, but they do end up breaking in, getting caught by none other than the mysterious figure in a disguise. And who does it turn out to be? For some reason, Cairo Siphon seems a little odd. In fact, this whole first scene of Fiona seems a bit odd and out of place, but as Fionna reminds him, they basically saved him and now he's their enemy. Now, if you remember to back what I said in episode 1, that if Queenie represents the King of Oo, then this disguised figure was most likely the disguised figure that the King of Oo had, who ended up being Orgalork. And as we see, that's not necessarily the case, although he is somewhat of a cosmic entity, just not Orgalork. Now, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but in terms of Fionna lore this episode, there's really not much. Don't get me wrong, I'll still talk about all the scenes because there's definitely some character development stuff to talk about, but in terms of a deep cut character lore, there's really not much. But you know what, there is a lot of deep character lore to Huntress Wizard, and that's exactly who we cut back to. This time, picking up where from she left off in episode 1. You know that jump scare? Well, it turns out it's actually Witch Wizard, who is still on guard duty of the heart of the forest. Now, this is also where things get a little bit fuzzy fuzzy because I'm pretty sure it was heavily implied that Finn did in fact kill this bear. But nope, she's alive. She was just choked out. Now, you might also notice that the witch wizard looks pretty different from how we saw her at the very beginning of this episode. And this will begin my kind of out there theory as to what the first scene of this episode actually is. And that's that Huntress Wizard is not from this universe. She's from the universe that we see in the very first scene of this episode. Remember when I said the art style was different? In Adventure Time, having a different art style could mean two different things. Either it was done by a guest animator studio, or it's another universe. And as far as the animation style goes, it's not that different, only the art style is. So I believe that this is representatory of another universe itself. This is further backed up by those two birds we see, and that we'll later see in this episode, but we haven't gotten there yet. As for what Huntress Wizard is here for though, is a little bit of sap from the heart of the forest. You know, no big deal. Obviously the witch wizard would not allow her to do this as she's the protector, so they have this incredible fight scene which ends with a crocodile biting a log, an obvious reference to the title card. Now what? Well, she needs some sap from it to help Finn out, and then this is the start of my next theory, because that sap looks a little familiar. From the beginning of this episode, we've established that there's Wizard City, where there's normal wizards, and then the Heart of the Forest, where there's green wizards. If you remember from the miniseries Distant Lands, specifically Wizard City, we got the history of how Wizard City came to be, and it's basically built on top of Kokontepi, who was an ancient primordial being with an insane amount of power, but was kept hidden away so that people couldn't stumble onto this power. Okay, so now we know Wizard City is built on top of a primordial being that was specifically kept hidden away so that people couldn't use its power. Now, what do we see after Huntress Wizard gets her sap from the Heart of the Forest? Well, we see it spring to life, and it turns out it's this big, giant deer thing. But one specific detail really puts the nail in the coffin to this theory. This being is chained up. Now, not only is the Heart of the Forest supposed to be a secret, I mean, that's literally what the Order is mad at her for that she told Finn, but this being is hidden away. He's literally buried and chained up. Does that sound familiar? That's basically what happened to Kokontepi. So it seems like these primordial beings are in charge of all magic across Ooo, and it seems like this one was in charge of providing the green wizards with their power. Now, as for the reaching out a little bit part, if you remember back to the episode Gold Stars, we actually see a ton of primordial beings, specifically Orgolord and Kokontepi. And if you look in this big pile of monsters, you can kind of see what looks to be tree branches. Now, obviously, we don't see a body, and tree branches could be a bit of a reach, but who knows? Maybe that's this primordial being. Now, another reason why I'm so sure that this is actually a primordial being as well is because of their legs. At first, I thought these were just little stems popping out of his feet because I thought they were just trunks, but it turns out they're actually hands. And if you remember back to the Sea of Monsters in Gold Stars, that's a key characteristic of that big blob, is a bunch of hands popping out. I think that just reinforces that this is in fact a primordial being that was kept away and hidden so that people couldn't use its power, just like what happened in Wizard City. Now, what I don't really get is that this one little puncture ended up what I can only assume is killing this primordial being. It almost implodes and opens this weird portal to which Huntress Wizard gets thrown into, and will be the remaining part of her lore throughout this episode, but again, we'll get there. But I guess I just don't really understand how a primordial being could be killed by something so little. I guess we'll find out. But nonetheless, we're back with Fionna. And where's she at? Well, she's at none other than Ruby's bar. But what's Ruby's bar? It is the human gender-bent version of Dirt Beer Guy's bar from season 1, episode 2. And we know this because the cocktail that Fionna gets served is the exact same one that Simon orders in that episode. So Ruby is the human gender-bent version of Dirt Beer Guy. Cute little detail on Ruby, but the scarf or whatever she has around her neck represents the plant that is growing out of Dirt Beer Guy. Thought that was cool. Anyways, they're all in here sulking because of what just happened, you know, with Cairo's siphon. But if you notice, there's a character standing in the background who we've seen before. We've seen this character from season 1, episode 7, The Star, at the blood drive and charity ball that Marshall Lee's mother was hosting. But who is this mysterious character? It's the human gender-bent version of the demon guards from the Nightosphere, specifically from the episode Return to the Nightosphere. Now, is this character going to be important? Probably not, but who knows? It is interesting how he's just standing there in the background, because we don't see any other characters sitting in the background like that, just him. But then again, it's a bar, so who knows? We get a cute little Gary and Marshall Lee moment as Gary offers Marshall Lee if he wants to live with him. Anyways, remember how I said that in this episode there's not really a whole lot of Fionna lore, more just character development? Well, we start to see it a lot here. Like I said before, everyone is in this bar sad. that basically Queenie won. But Fionna refuses this. She's almost forcing what her next purpose is going to be. She's supposed to be this big hero. I mean, she literally saved their universe. Everyone living in here is only alive because of her, but she herself doesn't feel like that. And it seems like she's really trying to find her next thing. And it seems like it's helping her friends, but that could also be some internal guilt that she feels from pretty much ruining all of the universes that she visited back in season 1. And what I think the clip in the first episode of season 2 with all of her friends' heads cut off means. It's her subconscious holding on to that guilt that she might think she ruins other people's lives just by being in them. Because she also does apologize to Gary that she recommended that place in the first place. The spot where they decided to open the sweet spot and eventually get overtaken by Queenie. It seems like that's really what's going to drive Fionna throughout this entire new season. It's almost like she's forcing her help onto others. She needs this. But before we get to see what her next step is in that plan, we cut back to Wizard City with our good old new professor Simon Petrikov, who's desperately trying to keep Finn alive while doing all the research that he can on the heart of the forest to no avail because it's supposed to be a secret, and it seems like they did a pretty good job of that. As Huntress Wizard just up and left Finn there back in episode 1, Simon actually decides to call Marceline, as we see that is Princess Bubblegum holding Marceline's phone, but it's Princess Bubblegum and Simon who are having the conversation about Finn and her reassuring him, which is actually pretty nice to see. In episode 1, Simon said that it was a little awkward being around Princess Bubblegum because, you know, he used to be the Ice King and used to kidnap her all the time, but her reassuring him that Finn will be okay is kind of a really sweet moment that you just like to see. But their outfits here are both adorable, and I can't wait to see more Bubble Line moments and content in the future episodes. Okay, but now we get to see what Fionna's next step actually was for her plan, and that was to retrieve the peppermint tank. But there was a catch. She had to make a deal with the peppermint tank that she would watch baby Finn now. So it looks like baby Finn will now be on our adventures throughout the rest of this season, which would make sense from some of the clips that we see in the trailer, but now it's official. However, Fionna's plan was to take the peppermint tank and blow it up. She quickly realizes that her plan probably wasn't that smart, but sees a for sale sign, and now that's her new plan. She's just gonna buy it. And the leaves blowing in the background as Fionna has her heroic moment. Coincidence? I don't think so. Another clip showing that Fionna and Huntress Wizard are somehow linked. Could be. But as we'll see later in this episode, this new plan to buy the land instead of destroying it would also prove to be a bit difficult and kind of spiral Fionna even further down a rabbit hole. But we'll get to that because we got more Huntress Wizard lore. Now it seems like whatever space that Huntress Wizard currently is in right now is some sort of in between life and death because, as we know, Finn is pretty sick. I mean, he literally tells her,
Huntress, I'm thinking about dying soon.
And Huntress Wizard herself is also not looking the best. As for when she got sucked into that portal, there was an explosion knife in her shoulder that ended up exploding and sending her to bits. So they're both not doing so well, but what also seals this deal is we see a butterfly. And not just any butterfly. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same butterfly that we see as one of Finn's past lives. So whatever place this is seems to be a middle ground between life and death. Let's take a tiny break from all of the deep cut lore. This is kind of a sweet and cute moment between Finn and Huntress Wizard, although short-lived, because we see Huntress Wizard is a floating head inside of this primordial being that was the heart of the forest. Now this is the real meat and bones of this episode. If the backdrop looks familiar, it's because it's the same backdrop that we see in the Fionna and Cake intro, where we actually see the words Fionna and Cake, so it must be pretty important, and as we'll see later, it kind of is, but it's also pretty confusing. At first, these flying eye creatures absorb all of her body parts, including her head, in a very similar fashion to as we saw when she first laid down her hand on the ground next to the heart of the forest, which then got absorbed and gave her powers. Her body parts get transformed into seeds that get sent into these star-looking things on the tree branches, but she also gets a form very similar to how we see Finn in the episode Astral Plane. Okay, now I'm bringing back one of the things that I said to remember all the way at the very start of this video, the barbed wire. If you look at some of these roots in the background, you would see that some of them resemble exactly what a barbed wire hook would look like. There's also this weird lightning that constantly goes on around in this plane, but I honestly have no idea what that could be. Going back to her body part seeds though, they all get sent into separate star-looking things, and what do those turn out to be? Multiverse portals. Yep, we're still going strong with the multiverses, and these are all the universes that we see. Farm World, the vampire universe. What I could only assume is is the extinct world that we see in season 1, episode 8, Jerry, by the very muted yellowish colors, but I could be wrong. Somewhere underwater. Now, this could be a bit of a reach, but as far as I know, inside of Adventure Time, the only universe that exists underwater is Life, or the Life universe. That's where we see Finn and Jake get sent in the Distant Lands episode together again, and Life resides in this underwater world, which could make sense in this context as Finn is battling for his life, and it seems like Huntress Wizard would do anything to try and help him. Then we see a universe that I don't think we've seen before. Now, it looks kind of similar to the Shape universe that we saw in the episode Prismo the Wishmaster as he was going through all of the universes, but then again, it also doesn't. I think we've seen this in the trailer with all those beings floating around. I think this is that universe, and it appears to be in space. Looks like Baby World is coming back. And then one other universe, which is a bit of a theory, and we'll see it in a little bit, but back to this weird plane of existence that she currently exists in, there's someone else in here with her, and in the credits is only listed as the voice. Now, I can only assume that this has to be that primordial being as she entered the portal that led inside of it, but then again, that portal could have led somewhere else. I don't really know. And then all of a sudden, it starts to rain blood, or what I can only assume is blood. Again, this could mean that she literally did kill that primordial being, and this represents it bleeding. A very literal representation of that, but to be honest, this whole thing is pretty confusing. This voice is the voice that ends up guiding her to kind of get herself grounded, return back to her focused pose where she hangs upside down. Remember back to the very beginning of this episode, this was the pose that she was learning. So she's concentrating. She hears Simon talking about Finn and enters a universe. Now, we'll get to that universe in a second, but as she's concentrating, we get another look at all of the universes that her seed ended up in. And the order from the very first time we are shown all the universes is Farm World, Vampire World, and then what I can only assume was the Extinct World. Obviously, there were more after that, but we see a similar order here. We see Farm World Finn chopping wood, and then we see a vampire floating by our faces, but there's a shot in between those two, which would break the order, and it's of a bird. Now, remember what I said at the very beginning of this video, that very first scene of Huntress Wizard with a different art style that I think represents a different universe entirely. There were two birds that were with her pretty much the entire time, and this looks like one of those exact same birds. Same design, same everything. And this is shown during all the different universes that her seed ended up in, which is why I really think that first scene actually represents an entire different universe itself from where Huntress Wizard came from. Kind of jumbled, and I'm sorry if you got confused, but let me know if I'm missing anything or if you think I'm wrong, because I'd love to hear all the discussion about your theories in the comments. Okay, but back to the universe that she chose. She heard Simon talking about Finn, so she obviously thinks that's ooh, but it turns out it's actually Fiona's universe because she heard Fiona's phone call and heard Simon's voice through Fiona's phone. So now Huntress Wizard is officially in Fiona's world, and this is how. And now going back to Fiona's character development, her new plan to buy the land seems to have put her deeper in a spiral as she realizes she really doesn't have any money at all because she was never taught. She's beginning to feel that she's going to get left behind. After all, Gary pretty much quit on getting back his land. He admitted that Queenie won. So now Fionna is trying to force herself to help, but it's just making things worse, not only for them, but for herself as well. I mean, as she literally tells baby Finn,
"No one taught you anything, and that's not your fault. You're trying your best, but if you don't pull it together, everyone's gonna leave you."
That's what Fionna is feeling right now. She wasn't taught anything. She wasn't taught how to save money, so she could use that money to buy the land. And because she failed and Gary pretty much quit on her, she feels like all of her friends are going to leave her behind. So she's trying to force her help so that they don't leave her behind. But this is just making things worse and keeps spiraling her. That's basically how Fionna is feeling right now, or what I interpret all this as. It also seems like Fionna has not spotted Huntress Wizard yet, who realizes she can barely move, but ends up finding a pot with some dirt in it, somehow manages to throw her seed into that pot of dirt, and begins to start growing with her eyes. And then we get our first little Easter egg into the end credits. Now, if you remember back to season 1, every episode in the end credits, we got a little dream that Fionna and Cake had. It was up to us to interpret what it meant. And from season 2, episode 1, the end credits just looked kind of cool. There wasn't really any Easter eggs, but here we have our first little one. In episode 1, it's the same little animation of Fionna watering, but this time there's a little sprout, which most likely means that Fionna not only will have to take care of baby Finn, but probably all also a baby Huntress Wizard as she begins to grow from her seed. And I'm sure, as we'll see in later episodes in end credits, that Sprout will only begin to grow and grow. Now, I'm sorry if some of my theories were a little not put together. I'm filming this right after the episode comes out, and for me, episodes come out at 2 a.m. So it is currently 5:30 as I'm finishing this up. So cut me some slack, please, but let me know what you think in the comments. I love the theory craft with a lot of you because this episode specifically gave us a ton of Huntress Wizard lore to go off of. Not so much Fionna just yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. So like I said, please let me know. And if you didn't know, I try to make new videos explaining every episode as they come out for each episode. So don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a new one. I'm hopefully getting this one out a lot earlier than the last one, and I'm hoping to make that a habit. So please subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm sorry if I sounded a little tired. I definitely am. And thank you all for sticking with me. I'm so excited, like I said last time. But as always, stay adventurous.